Welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piskor.
And I'm Tom Scholey, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, and Fantastic Four Grand Design.
Today we're going to take a look at Jim Shooter's earliest professional comics at the age of 14. But first, we invite you guys to like, follow, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please hit the bell icon so that we can notify you when new videos are available. That will mitigate the kayfabe effect, which is what happens whenever we talk about a comic. The video goes live. Often these comics become prohibitively expensive on the aftermarkets, Amazon, eBay, your local comic shop, what have you. So get in early and you get the first dibs. If you watch these videos to the very end, you're helping us to push our YouTube content out to a wider audience. That helps the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel grow a subscriber base, which in turn makes it possible for us to continue bringing you these videos. Now, without further ado, let's take a look at Adventure Comics 346, which does signify the earliest professional efforts of a 14-year-old Jim Shooter who came armed with basically comics that were drawn on typing paper that he submitted to DC Comics, and lo and behold, that old grizzled cuss Mort Weisinger liked the stuff, bought the stuff, and commissioned the boy to make comics regularly. It's by issue, the letters page in issue 349, where the editors mention that, you know, this comic was written by a 14-year-old kid, Jim Shooter.
Yeah, we've talked about it in like a previous episode, but like why they didn't shout that from the rooftops, you know, have his picture and like this could be you.
Right,
know?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And such a pleasure to read these professionally produced comics done by a kid. I was actually thinking, Tom, about like the generations of Pittsburgh cartoonists.
Yes.
And which generation, like how, like what's the family tree? And where does Jim Shooter lie on that family tree? Where do we lie on that family tree? So let's play a game real quick. Man.
Okay.
So here's my thoughts and fill in the blanks, dude. If I'm wrong. So Gen 1, that's Jackie Orms and Matt Baker. That's Generation 1 of Pittsburgh cartoonists. And Matt Baker, he's from Homestead. So me and him are the only Homestead boys. I'm gonna say that Jim Shooter is Generation 2. And he's the only person in Generation 2. I don't know any other Pittsburghers who were making comics in like the 60s.
Yeah. I mean, you know, comics was such a closed shop.
Right. New York centric.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm happy to extend that to people born in Pittsburgh that like went to New York. But who's the other guy? Steve Ditko. It might be the
close
closest.
Enough. Yeah, you could drive there quite easily from here.
So Gen 3... Do we claim Paul Galassi because he went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh? Do you claim him?
Of course. Hey, if you got a cheesesteak, you're a Pennsylvania cartoonist.
But I think that's, you know, Galassi, if you want to put him there. Ron Friends.
Yeah.
And Joe Jusko. And Pat Olive. Is that fair? Mm-hmm. The next generation would be Scott McDaniel. And who else from his... Anybody? I get maybe it's Pat Olive, Scott McDaniel, and then with the next round, it's us.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you're at the forefront of like our generation because you got that Zero Grant when I was a senior in high school. Still,
yeah. I'm a year older than Jim, so I'm his senior.
Right. Yeah. So like that's just one of those fun lineage things to think about, man, and. Jim Shooter, Mount Lebanon boy.
Spoiled,
yeah.
Now, see, I've all these years been picturing him as like, you know, hard scrabble, like his dad's a miner or something. You're telling me he's from Mount Lebanon?
Yeah, totally.
Forget about it.
Yeah, he's bougie, man. So like, you know, he creates his own mythology. When he talks about his dad working at the mill, his dad probably ran the mill and told those guys who lost their fingers to get back to work.
He ran the Shooter Mill.
But let's get to the comic.
Sure, yeah.
Heck of a freaking comic.
So much fun.
Cartoonist Kayfabe is brought to you by the comic books that we make. In stores now, Tom Scholey has Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, complete biography about the man behind the Marvel Universe in one handy bound volume, 300 pages worth of material there. Fantastic Four Grand Design is still on stands. That is Tom's version of the complete Fantastic Four story in one handy volume. On the racks right now is Red Room Trigger Warnings, 4 issues of that on your local comic shop racks at this very moment. But the Trigger Warnings trade paperback is coming out September 2022, and Jimmy has Hulk Grand Design, Monster, and Madness are in your comic shops today. The single issues, 40 pages apiece, telling the complete story of the Incredible Hulk. And around Christmas time comes the Treasury edition of Hulk Grand Design with fluorescent ink on that cover. So that thing is going to stand out a mile away. Now that we're done paying the bills, please support our comics. Let's get back to the video.
Unless you read a lot of, DC comics of this era, you're not going to understand just how much of a standout this is. Those comics are their homework. They're boring as all fuck. Made by it's old guys trying to sit down and tell a little kid a story,
right,
and just missing the mark. And here's somebody of their generation coming in and showing you how it's done. They're so much fun.
Now, you have an affinity towards pretty old pop culture, and we've established that you're way older than me.
Yeah, a little bit.
So, 66, I guess, the Batman show is out. Is Green Hornet and Kato happening? Because, this is Karate Kid, and I feel like it would make sense for a kid to latch onto karate. But where would he latch onto that? Would it be Kato in 66?
That's a great question. I mean, I think it is there. I think James Bond, judo chop. James Bond would say, and Austin Powers would repeat.
And isn't there a little karate in Manchurian Candidate?
Yes. Yeah, it's like slow motion karate. It's so funny seeing early karate in movies because it's slow motion in
right,
Hollywood movies.
Because, the outfit certainly doesn't communicate anything to do with the martial arts at all.
I mean, it may be colored differently. I mean, it does have sort of a V-neck similar to a gi. He has a black belt. If it were all white, it would read a lot closer.
And I guess Marshall, in terms of the planet Mars, it is a red planet. But now we're taking leaps of logic. So young Jim Shooter, imagine being a 14-year-old drawing comics on a piece of typing paper and having professionally produced. It's kind of like you see these memes of a little kid drawing a sketch and then their dad doing the final a painting or something like that. This kid got to do this every month.
Yeah,
and maybe a couple of times a month.
That was the conceit of Axe Cop, of an older brother and a younger brother, and
Yeah, absolutely, man. We get such a great cover, letting us know that the cliffhanger of this thing, man, that one of them is a traitor.
Yeah,
and we are being introduced to 4 new characters. This is the part of the video where if Jim was here, he would be talking about the bursting of ideas that a young creator has when they first get their shot. And the very first comic that Jim Shooter is professionally commissioned to do, he's giving DC 4 characters.
And this is what I love about great superhero comics, is sort of the idea that anything could happen at any moment. Anybody could be introduced. And so often that's just an illusion. It doesn't happen. But you have this kid come in. Part of your job is coming up with new stuff, and he's delivering right off the bat. This is the beginning of Jim Shooter's building this expanded universe of Legion of Superheroes.
Doesn't this look like a Jaime Hernandez character?
Yeah, I mean, this Legion. I feel, especially when they started doing when Jaime started doing superhero stuff in Love and Rockets. It feels like this is right in line with that aesthetic. And all of these characters go on to bigger and better things after this. Great
kid-like names, Princess Prodrectra, and what's happening here is we got 4 potential team members. Bouncing Boy is out. He's on the Atkins diet, or there's some reason why he can't participate. Starboy is gone. So we need some fresh blood in the Legion. So we're gonna get introduced to these characters and take a couple of pages to show you their powers. Yeah. Let me see these roughs, please.
Yes.
Where are these things? Can we please have these things in a print edition? This is fantastic. It looks like, in some ways, it looks like the compositions might have been completely used with just because that is.
Yeah, and I love a 2-panel
Yeah.
page.
And you never
don't
got
see
that
it.
in
Yeah.
DC Comics
Yeah.
for sure. Nemesis Kid.
I forget, because this is a 2-parter. We don't find
Right.
out who, but I forget who it is exactly, who's the culprit or what the thing is. But I mean, Nemesis Kid, I don't really like. I know these other ones from later comics. I don't really know him, so I'm guessing it's him. But yeah,
Nemesis is a bad word.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
you don't want somebody in your team who's named
Yeah.
Nemesis. Always so funny when these very clip arty Church of the Subgenius Bob Dog fucking artists have to draw anything sort of alien because it's sort of uncanny. It's just the regular stamped out face.
Yeah,
It's-
he flips this
It's
face.
this boy's
Yeah.
face, but give him a bald head, some pointy ears, and a couple antennas on the head.
Mm-hmm.
You would see that when like the old jobbers would draw like Thundercats or something. It would be
Yeah.
just like a regular face with lion-nose hair.
The demonstrations of powers are interesting, and again, like we're seeing, like stuff that's kind of out of. You're getting Kurt Swan or whoever drawing it, but it's not the kind of stuff he usually draws. Like, and it does, Shooter's. He's a Marvel kid. He's bringing like a Marvel energy to stodgy DC Comics.
Right. Doesn't that almost feel like Dave Gibbons' piece
Yeah.
of art right there? That's Pharaoh Lad.
Yeah, Pharaoh Lad, has an interesting place in the Legion of Superheroes. And it's also like, you could see a guy who's like 14, a kid who's like 14 or whatever, coming up with, because it's like, he just learned about the periodic table of elements.
Absolutely. And like, you don't even say the word ferrous metal, like, unless you're some kind of scientist, outside of a 6th grade classroom.
Yeah.
Or unless you're writing Magneto.
Now this is the really fun part, is we have Karate Kid, great name. And he comes in, I love I love these things where you have like a shadow part of the composition.
Yeah, there was a good piece of that with the Pharaoh Lad right there.
Yeah. Yeah, and that whole thing of like a bunch of, this sort of council looking down on somebody, it's an established part of Legion of Superhero iconography. It's there from like the cover of their first appearance. But like, it's Karate Kid challenges Superboy to a fight.
Yeah, and Superboy's like, I'll fucking wreck you, dude. Are you kidding me?
And he does. Superboy holds back a little, but he realizes it's like way more of a fight than he could have ever imagined.
Yeah, this guy has some chops. And he doesn't, like, crack his knuckles on Superboy's chest. Like, this dude is a tough motherfucker, even though he does wear a skirt.
He uses your energy against you. So Superboy's coming out with that super power energy, and so it's going right back on him. And we get like an extended fight scene. Another thing you'd see in a Marvel comic, but you wouldn't see in a DC comic of this era.
Yeah, they would say, Gil Kane said when he was doing his Green Lantern comics, around this time and a little bit earlier, you get one punch in a Green Lantern story. You get one punch. We got to establish that Karate Kid can chop through steel beams. Very important.
And so here's the Boy of Steel. Maybe he can chop through him too. Another thing I learned recently is at DC around this time, there was a prohibition against perspective, exaggerated perspective. So all that stuff, like the coming at you kind of stuff that we love in comics and is all over Marvel, the artists weren't allowed to do that.
Let's just have no fun, right?
Right, yeah. Exactly. Like, that's the thing I've learned studying the history of comics is there's all this whole structure set in place to make sure that nothing cool ever comes out of this company.
I got commissioned, I signed an NDA, so I can't say the name or anything, but this is years ago while I was working on Hip Hop Family Tree, like at the earliest iteration of that, where a very prominent publisher was established from the outside. They are no longer around, but they wanted me to write comics for them, and there were mandates about there had to be 6 panels per page, no less than 6 panels per page, and that was like built into like the agreements at the very beginning, and I just completely went against that. I just could not participate in that. If you're going to tell me how many panels are required to make a story for you, we're in different businesses.
Yeah.
We're in completely different businesses. You have some idea about what you want to do, and that I am not privy to. I have no idea, and have no interest in.
I mean, like, you as a reader, you always wonder, like, why aren't comics as cool as they could be?
Yeah.
They could be so cool. Why aren't? And it's like, we've learned the answer.
Yeah, and just, through ourselves, like, there's the chilling effect that could happen where, these guys, they get their page rate, and say they draw something where they're stretching a little bit. Now they have to redraw it potentially. So they're just hedging against having to redraw stuff or redo work that has already been paid for, that they will not be paid for to amend. You want to see the Jim Shooter drawing of this?
Yes, yeah, I want to see and I've seen a few of the Jim Shooter hand-drawn pages, but I want the complete stuff.
Absolutely. Where do you remember where you could have seen it? Was it just online or something?
It was online, but it was. I think I've seen some in print in like one of those like Tomorrow's publications,
right.
It's showing up in there. And but I want the complete thing,
Yeah. So we established these 4 new potential Legionnaires. They all pass with flying colors, and it ends with Karate Kid getting his due. He gets accepted into the Legion. Jim Shooter said in an interview, and I never investigated it, and Jim Shooter does create his own legend, so I don't know if it's there.
Right.
But he said that there is a thank you or a shout out to him in the credits of the Karate Kid movie, the Ralph Macchio.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I wonder if that's. I mean, it is kind of like. I learned about the Ralph Macchio Karate Kid first, of course,
right.
and then started getting into comics, and wait, there's a Karate Kid here. Obviously, it's a copy of Ralph Macchio. And then you find out, no, he's from the 60s. What's going on? Why isn't there, like, a Netflix, DC Karate Kid show,
right.
instead of Cobra Kai? Maybe that's why it's called Cobra Kai and not Karate Kid. I don't know. But, so then, this whole setup, this whole thing that happens is something I haven't seen in a, non-Jim Shooter DC comic prior to this.
Explain.
But is so much like a thing you see in film to this day too. This is like the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek or whatever, where you have these raw recruits, they're introduced, and then now all of a sudden there's a real attack going on, and we got to send these raw recruits to deal with, this attack on the school or attack on the base. Or like we've seen it a million times, but not in a comic,
right.
Until this. Not in a DC comic.
We have this guy, this Kubla Khan fella, Garlic.
That's a great pronunciation. Yeah, Garlac, Warlord of Kund. And he has and watch out, Superboy, because I have a supply of kryptonite weapons.
Yeah, that's great, right? That's total kid logic.
Yeah, perfect.
Because you got to think it through, man. Like, you always have... This is like the strongest link in the chain, so you always have to figure out how to disassemble this dude.
Yeah, and it's evocative. You're kind of picturing, what's that look like? It's not like, we have a rock of kryptonite. It's like, we got maybe some kryptonite laser guns, right. Kryptonite nunchucks or something.
Got our new Legionnaires sprinkled throughout as we show up to take care of this stuff. Another one of those uncanny pieces. Like, just is so uncool looking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is when the grown-ups are in charge. This guy's well established, Chameleon Boy. Or Chameleon Kid. And yet we just get some cool action sequences were just not part of the vocabulary of DC Comics at that time.
Yeah, a lot of walking around.
Yeah, a lot of people standing
heads.
Perfectly straight, looking each other in the eye, saying things, and then, maybe the action is somebody jumping out of a birthday cake.
Up to this point, you're totally forgetting about, like, this whole Traitor mess. Is it just another one of those DC covers where it's
right, like a Mort Weisinger kind of, like, gimmick.
Yeah. Because we certainly aren't dealing with any of that on any of these pages until basically the last, 2 pages. Mm-hmm. And it's a whole thing of, like, we were sabotaged. Like,
yes, there
was some tricks played on us. And we need to get to the bottom of this. Karate Kid is there. They're thinking he's kayfabing an injury.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is like Mission Impossible, like the first Tom Cruise one, where it's like, okay, something went wrong with this mission, and you're the only guy left, so maybe it's you.
Right. And here's the steel door that has absolute handprints on it. And we established that Karate Kid can do some things with steel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with his bare hands.
So it ain't looking good for him.
Yeah.
At all. And the way this thing ends, they're all but convinced that he's the guy. Mm-hmm. But they're no selling it to him and just letting him continue to do FEMA work well, they're suspicious of him. And as a reading experience, I want to read the next one.
Yeah, me too. And again, like I've read these before. I forget. You know, I'm thinking
we
maybe
read
it's
a lot of
Nemesis
comics.
Kid. Yeah, and but I forget how it all plays out. It's, you know, you get caught up in the moment.
The statement of ownership stuff is such a good piece of comics history to like sort of let you know where things are
Yeah.
at, and it also is a direct, numbers don't lie, and it is a direct indicator of sort of the faulty nature of the newsstand distribution system, and how almost anybody can see it as a business model. Like if you have some alternative that doesn't involve pulping hundreds of thousands of comics, like of course they would move in that direction, and it's all spelled out. I'm not exactly sure why they would do this stuff. The first thought that I have in mind is for accurate accounting for ad revenue.
Yeah,
Like
that
a
makes sense,
cost per click kind of thing. Like these are, we're not kayfabing numbers here.
Right.
Like you are sending this, like this is, there's some legal.
Yeah, there must be some,
Deal
you
here.
know, the way like like film revenues are public, but then, you know, Netflix views are secret.
Right. But let's see, total number of copies printed. We'll do the single issue nearest to the filing date. 788,000 copies of Adventure Comics. The last issue, as of this day, so probably 4 issues prior to this. Almost 1 million copies. Paid circulation and mail subscriptions would be 510,521. There was some free distro, 142. That's like file copies,
Right.
and
yeah.
whatever
Your
else.
comp list or something.
Yeah, your comp list, and maybe who knows what the heck.
Yeah, but are they sending them to reviewers?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. Like maybe one to, I don't know, Library of Congress. So you're dealing with comics that are actually being circulated. 510,663 copies of 788,000 copies of the sort of net total print run. They are pulping 277,337 copies. These are the copies that are unaccounted for, very spoiled or left over. These are the comics that would be sent back. These are the ones that you and I buy with the top masthead cut off that was sent back for receipt. They're unaccounted for, and the publisher made no money on those. Zero money on 277,000 copies. That is a hefty
Yeah, that's
print
some
run.
overhead. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. But it all leads to the total copies being 788,000. You have to print up in order to sell 510,000 copies. So of course, when something like the direct market comes along, it's a very attractive idea to know that you have orders for 100,000. You can estimate that there might be some extra sales from people who just see it on the rack. So maybe you print up 120,000 or something, and all that's left over is not your problem.
Like looking at comics history, every time things are on like an upswing, then something kind of comes along to fuck it up. So you'd have like the Kayfabe hearings and stuff like that. But like it was like the 60s, you kind of had this upwind from like the Batman TV show, the Marvel's kind of like grassroots kind of thing, kind of pushing stuff up. But that doesn't last long. It's by the end of the 60s, that's deflating too.
It's markets. Markets have their cycles and ebbs and flows. But nearly 1 million copies of Adventure Comics. So what is the big stuff doing?
Right.
There is also Bob Beerbaum. If you follow him on Facebook, old time retailer, one of the first. Like around Bud Plant era, all that shit. He I don't know where he finds this stuff, but he has numbers for distribution of 60s comics. There's almost zero Marvel on that.
Yeah.
On that list. It's Dell, lots of DC. It's
Like
John
Bugs
Stanley
Bunny
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Little Lulu comics and the Donald Duck stuff. But there might be in, say, of 25 comics, maybe the 24 highest is like Amazing Spider-Man one time, and that's the only Marvel comic on the list.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they were such a schlock house, and so coming from nothing.
Yeah.
That like the fact that they were getting something going, seemed like a revolution. I was watching an episode of You Betcha Life with Groucho from like the 50s, and one of the contestants was a guy who made comics. And he's like, "Oh, are you involved in those, nasty, those bad comics that are ruining the world, as this stuff is currently going on, like in the 50s?" And he's like, "Oh, no, we make, we make Porky Pig and, Sylvester and Tweety and things like that. Nothing like that. Our comics are wholesome, good entertainment for the kids."
That's super funny, man. So there it is, man. Jim Shooter's first professional comic, age 14, as a writer. Tremendous reading experience, certainly compared to almost any other DC comic you could read at the time.
I think of the greats of this era, like a Ditko or a Kirby or something. I think that those guys have there's a part of their inner child or what, there's like that kid inside of them that can kind of come out and take control of these things, and that's why this work is akin to their work, where it's not akin to those guys at DC who sold their souls years and years ago.
Super fun to look at, man, and tremendously inspiring.
Yeah.
In more ways than one, to have heard the story of a young Jim Shooter, age 14. I read that legend when I was 12 years old, and just as satisfying and fun to actually get a couple of these. And to read. This is actually sent in by a Kayfaber, man. So once again, that's not what Cartoonist Kayfabe could do for you. Ask what you could do for Cartoonist Kayfabe. And somebody out there, they really appreciated the initial Jim Shooter video that we did. And Homeboy sent us about a dozen Jim Shooter Legion of Superheroes comics that, we traded amongst the three of us. And this stuff ends up being an episode of the show. Super fun to look at. Without further ado, Tom, we'll let them know what you have out there, man, and we'll get the show on the road.
Yeah, Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, fantastic 4-grand design, American Barbarian, Satan Soldier. You can check out a bunch of my comics in PDF form at Patreon. Go to patreon.com, search Tom Scholey, and I have a YouTube channel called Total Recall Show.
Red Room Trigger Warnings, Murder on the Dark Web for Fun and Profit is the name of the game. The trade paperback is hitting the stands September 2022. Please support it in a big bad way, in the same way that you did the Antisocial Network trade paperback. You can get hold of my comics at my link tree in the description below this video. You can read the comics today on my Patreon. $3 gets you the archive. Nearly 300 pages worth of material is up there as we speak, and I'm serializing strips that are not going to see a print edition until 2023. Hit up that link tree. Also, when you take a look at the description of our video, you can find links to our spread shop where you can get your hands on Cartoonist Kayfabe merchandise, which also helps support the channel. Without further ado, Jimmy's not here. Tom, give him the marching orders. We'll be on our way.
Read more comics.